In the shadows of the Cold War, a sinister project known as MKUltra was born, marking the beginning of a dark chapter in psychological warfare. The Central Intelligence Agency, driven by a paranoid fear of Soviet mind control, initiated this top-secret program to unlock the secrets of the human mind. Their primary objective was to develop techniques for controlling human thought and behavior, a goal they pursued with chilling determination. A vast and horrifying arsenal of methods was deployed, ranging from psychoactive drugs to more brutal psychological tactics. Lysergic acid diethylamide, or LSD, became the cornerstone of their research, a powerful hallucinogen they believed could shatter the ego. Unwitting American and Canadian citizens became the guinea pigs in these dangerous and unethical experiments. The experiments were not confined to laboratories. They took place in hospitals, prisons, and even CIA-run safe houses in major cities. Vulnerable populations, including mental health patients, were targeted, their treatments twisted into horrifying research opportunities. Survivors recount tales of being given substances without their knowledge or consent, their reality warping into a nightmare. One survivor, a patient at a psychiatric institute, remembers her world dissolving into terrifying hallucinations after a routine treatment. Hypnosis, sensory deprivation, and psychological abuse were systematically used to break down an individual's sense of self. The goal was to create a tabula rasa, a blank slate, upon which a new personality or set of commands could be written. Dr. Evan Cameron, a respected psychiatrist, conducted particularly brutal experiments in Montreal, funded by the CIA. His depatterning technique involved subjecting patients to massive electroshocks and drug-induced comas for weeks on end. Following this, psychic driving was employed, where patients were forced to listen to looped audio messages for hours, even days. Julie Taney's father was one such victim, entering a hospital for a minor ailment and leaving a broken man with no memory of his family. Survivors speak of a profound sense of loss, a theft of their memories, their personalities, and their very souls. Trauma inflicted was not just psychological. It was a deep, existential wound that would never fully heal. Many victims were left with chronic depression, anxiety, and an inability to function in the world that had betrayed them. The program operated with impunity for 2 decades, a testament to the secrecy and lack of oversight within the intelligence community. In 1973, facing the threat of congressional investigation, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered the destruction of most MKUltra records. This act of destruction was a calculated attempt to erase the history of the program and bury its crimes forever. However, a clerical error saved some 20,000 documents from the shredder, providing a keyhole view into the darkness. These surviving files, combined with survivor testimony, became the foundation for the Church Committee investigations in 1975. The hearings, led by Senator Frank Church, exposed the shocking extent of the CIA's illegal activities to a horrified public. For the first time, the conspiracy was not just a rumor. It was a documented reality, confirmed by the government's own records. President Gerald Ford issued an executive order to prohibit drug testing on unwitting subjects, a direct response to the revelations. But for the survivors, these revelations were just the beginning of a long and arduous fight for justice. Many, like Lana Jean Ponting, were left with huge gaps in their memory, piecing together their past like a painful puzzle. The Canadian government eventually offered compensation to some of the victims of the Montreal experiments, but many were excluded. In the United States, the path to accountability has been even more difficult, with the government using legal loopholes to evade responsibility. Survivors and their families have filed lawsuits, But the destroyed records and statutes of limitations present formidable obstacles. The legacy of MKUltra is not just in the lives it destroyed, but in the profound public distrust of government it engendered. It serves as a chilling reminder of what can happen when power operates without transparency and accountability. The stories of the survivors are a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of unimaginable horror. They speak not for vengeance, but for truth, demanding that these atrocities are never forgotten and never repeated. The conspiracy is not over. It lives on in the fragmented memories of its victims and their ongoing quest for acknowledgement. Hearing their words is to understand the true cost of secrecy and the enduring pain of those who were sacrificed in its name. The project's code name, MKUltra, has become synonymous with the darkest fears about government overreach. Researchers were given a startling amount of freedom, encouraged to pursue any avenue that might lead to a breakthrough in mind control. Operation Midnight Climax was a sub-project where CIA-paid prostitutes lured unsuspecting men to safe houses. There, behind two-way mirrors, agents would watch as the men were drugged with LSD, and their reactions were studied. The project was not just about control, but also about creating amnesia, making subjects forget they had been interrogated. Frank Olson, an army scientist working on the program, was given LSD without his knowledge at a CIA retreat. 9 days later, he plunged to his death from a New York hotel window in what was ruled a suicide. His family, however, has always maintained that he was murdered to prevent him from exposing the program. Decades later, his body was exhumed, and a second autopsy suggested his death was more likely a homicide. The Olson case became one of the most infamous and public examples of MKUltra's lethal consequences. The program's reach extended into the counterculture movement of the 1960s. Some historians argue that the CIA's widespread distribution of LSD inadvertently helped fuel the psychedelic revolution. The irony is that a tool designed for control may have helped spark a movement dedicated to freedom and anti-authoritarianism. The search for a truth serum was an obsession, a magic bullet for winning the Cold War. But the drugs often produced not truth, but elaborate fantasies and false confessions, making them unreliable for intelligence gathering. The experiments were a catalog of human rights abuses, violating every ethical norm of science and medicine. The doctors and scientists involved rationalized their work as a necessary evil in the fight against communism. They were patriots in their own minds, even as they destroyed the minds of their fellow citizens. The story of MKUltra is a cautionary tale about the seductive allure of absolute power. It demonstrates how easily the line between national security and state-sponsored terror can be blurred. The victims' testimonies force us to confront the dark side of our own history. Their voices, once silenced, now echo through the decades, demanding to be heard. The conspiracy is not a theory. It is a collection of personal stories of pain, loss, and survival. Each survivor's account adds another piece to the mosaic of this vast and disturbing program. The initial funding for the project was hidden within the CIA's budget, approved with little to no oversight. Sidney Gottlieb, a chemist known as the Black Sorcerer, was the man who directed the program's technical side. Gottlieb was also responsible for developing lethal poisons for potential use in CIA assassinations. The project's scope was international, with collaborations happening with foreign intelligence agencies. Many of the techniques explored were based on research conducted in Nazi concentration camps, a horrifying lineage. The CIA actively sought out former Nazi doctors and scientists for their expertise in interrogation and torture. This grim connection highlights the moral vacuum in which the project operated. The use of sensory deprivation tanks was explored to see if it could induce a state of suggestibility. Radiation was another tool in their arsenal, with unwitting subjects exposed to dangerous levels. The psychological toll on the agents and prostitutes involved in the program is rarely discussed, but was also significant. We're both perpetrators and victims, caught in the web of the conspiracy. The end of the project in 1973 was not due to a moral awakening within the CIA. It was ended because it was deemed too risky in the post-Watergate political climate of increased scrutiny. The cover-up was almost as extensive as the project itself, a conspiracy to hide a conspiracy. The term conspiracy theory is often used to dismiss such stories, but MKUltra is a proven conspiracy fact. Angela Bardos, whose mother was a victim, speaks of the intergenerational trauma passed down through her family. The children of victims grew up in households shadowed by a secret they couldn't understand. Their parents were often emotionally distant, prone to outbursts, or lost in a fog of medication. The fight for recognition is also a fight to heal these familial wounds. Online communities have become a vital space for survivors and their families to connect and share their stories. In this digital space, they find validation and the strength to continue their fight. The narrative of MKUltra is still being written, as new information and new victims continue to emerge. It is a stark warning against the dangers of unchecked power and the state's capacity for cruelty. The victim stories are not just history. They are a living plea for vigilance and justice in our own time. The project sought to create Manchurian candidates, hypnotically programmed assassins. While there's no proof they succeeded, the intent itself was a monstrous breach of ethics. The CIA's own Inspector General's report in 1963 was highly critical of the program's morality and effectiveness. The report noted the extreme danger to subjects and the difficulty of controlling the experiments. Despite this internal warning, the program continued for another decade, a sign of its deep institutional support. The use of black sites for interrogation was not a modern invention. MKUltra pioneered the concept. These were places outside the law, where any horror could be perpetrated without consequence. The psychological profiles of the researchers themselves would be a fascinating, if terrifying, undeed. What kind of person is drawn to the study of breaking another human being? The legacy of MKUltra is also seen in modern debates about enhanced interrogation techniques. The same justifications of national security and necessary evil are echoed today. The Survivors' Council is a powerful rebuke to this logic, showing the human cost of such policies. Their very existence is an act of defiance against the forces that try to erase them. The conspiracy is a ghost that haunts the American intelligence community to this day. It represents a fundamental betrayal of the trust between a government and its people. The quest for truth continues, fueled by the courage of those who refuse to be silenced. Their stories are a permanent stain on the history of the CIA. The program's tendrils reached into universities, corrupting the very institutions of learning. Professors and researchers, tempted by grant money, became complicit in the agency's work. This created a secret campus where students and patients were experimented on without their knowledge. The ethical breach was profound, turning healers into tormentors and academic inquiry into a weapon. The survivors often feel a deep sense of betrayal by the doctors and nurses they were supposed to trust. This betrayal is a core component of the trauma they have endured for decades. The story of MKUltra is not just about spies and secret agents. It's about the vulnerability of the human mind. It explores the terrifying ease with which reality and identity can be deconstructed. The survivors are living proof that you can break a person's mind, but not always their spirit. Their continued fight for justice is a fight for the soul of a nation. They remind us that true patriotism is not blind obedience, but holding power accountable. The echoes of MKUltra are a warning that we must never take our freedoms for granted. The conspiracy is a dark mirror held up to society, reflecting its deepest fears and greatest failings. To listen to the survivors is to take the first step towards ensuring such a nightmare never happens again. The project officially began under the leadership of CIA Director Allen Dulles. Dulles was convinced the Soviets had developed mind-controlled drugs and the US was falling behind. This belief created a sense of urgency that overrode nearly all ethical considerations. The project's name is a cryptonym, with MK designating the technical services staff of the CIA. The word ultra was used to designate the most secret level of classification. The experiments were often designed with a veneer of legitimate scientific research to maintain cover. This deception made it easier to secure funding and cooperation from institutions like universities. The victims were often told they were receiving cutting-edge therapy for their conditions. This cruel deception added another layer of psychological trauma when the truth was revealed. The long-term effects of the drugs were unknown and, to the researchers, irrelevant. Their only concern was the immediate utility of a substance for interrogation or control. Many survivors suffer from flashbacks, reliving their traumatic experiences decades later. These flashbacks can be triggered by seemingly innocuous sounds, smells, or sights. The fight for public acknowledgement is a form of therapy for many, a way to reclaim their narrative. By speaking out, they transform from passive victims into active agents of truth. The conspiracy of silence that once protected the perpetrators is now being shattered. Each testimony is a hammer blow against that wall of silence. The story of MKUltra is a stark reminder that monsters are not just in fairy tales. Sometimes they wear lab coats and government badges. And the heroes are the ordinary people who, having faced the monster, find the courage to tell the world what they saw.